Greetings and a warm welcome to The Sleepy Scholar. Tonight, we turn our gentle attention toward the vast and intricate landscape of memory, that invisible and silent process that quietly constructs the essence of who you are, orchestrates the knowledge you hold, and determines how the shadows of the past accompany you into every unfolding moment. Memory is far more than a simple storage facility for facts. It is a living, breathing, and flexible system that is constantly at work, tirelessly weaving together the threads of your experiences, your deepest emotions, and your future expectations into the coherent narrative you recognize as your life. Every skill you have ever mastered, every face that brings a spark of recognition, and every fleeting sense of familiarity or nostalgia finds its origin here. This faculty can be remarkably precise, yet at other times strangely unreliable. It has the power to protect you, to surprise you with sudden recollections, and occasionally to mislead you. It allows the human brain to reach backward into the depths of history and forward into the imagined future, often performing both feats simultaneously. Even in this very moment, as you listen to my voice, your memory is actively shaping what you choose to notice, how you understand these words, and what will remain with you when silence returns. In this journey together, we will explore the myriad ways that memory operates behind the curtains of your consciousness. We will observe how it takes form, how it evolves over time, and why the act of forgetting is just as vital to your well-being as the act of remembering. It is a subject that intimately touches upon sleep, emotion, learning, your sense of identity, and the boundlessness of your imagination. If you find comfort in these gentle journeys of the mind, I invite you to like, subscribe to The Sleepy Scholar, or share a quiet thought below. It assists other sleepy souls in finding their way to this sanctuary, one person at a time. But for now, all that is required of you is to relax completely. Let your body soften into the surface beneath you. Allow your eyelids to grow heavy, and let your mind unwind as we drift through this fascinating world. Let us begin. The sensation known as the tip of the tongue is actually memory searching in real time. That often frustrating moment when a word hovers just beyond your grasp is not a sign of emptiness. Rather, it is a signal that the memory has been partially activated. You might recall the initial letter, the rhythmic cadence of the syllables, or perhaps a similar word that keeps intruding upon your thoughts. This occurs because the brain stores related concepts and words in interconnected networks. When you attempt to retrieve a specific item, its nearby neighbors may also light up with activity, and sometimes these neighbors block the intended path by being louder than the target. The tip of the tongue state is essentially the mind whispering, "I am close, the trail is warm." Often, if you cease the struggle and stop forcing the recall, the word arrives effortlessly a bit later because the network has continued its search in the background. Using cues can be helpful. Meaningful context where you utilize the word previously, or imagine a phrase that typically contains it. Even shifting your focus to a different topic can assist, as it reduces the active interference. This phenomenon reveals something intimate about our minds. Memory is not instantaneous. It is a living search process, and you can physically feel it unfolding. Sudden insight often arrives when these memory networks finally bridge a gap. This can frequently feel like a moment of magic. 1 minute you are completely stuck, and in the next heartbeat, the answer appears fully formed. Beneath the surface of your conscious awareness, your brain was busily experimenting with combinations. It was linking old reservoirs of knowledge to the current problem in novel ways, testing possibilities well outside your direct awareness. When the correct connection finally locks into place, it bursts into your consciousness as a complete and recognizable pattern. That is why the realization can feel sudden, even if you have been laboring over it for hours. Insight is also the reason why taking breaks is so effective. When you step away, you reduce the pressure on the obvious, well-worn neural routes, allowing the brain to explore quieter alternatives. Sleep can aid this process immensely because it reorganizes memory networks, creating new bridges between disparate ideas. Many creative breakthroughs throughout history demonstrate this pattern. The scientist who solves a complex puzzle during a walk, or the writer who finds the perfect line while brewing tea. Insight is simply memory, recombining itself. It is the brain utilizing what you already possess in a new configuration, then handing you the result with a satisfying click of certainty. Testing yourself strengthens memory far more effectively than simply rereading. Rereading text feels smooth, and that fluency can trick you into believing you have truly learned the material. Self-testing, however, feels more difficult, yet that very struggle is often the point. When you attempt to retrieve information from your mind, you are practicing the exact skill you will need later. You are also demonstrating to your brain which areas are weak so it can target them for reinforcement. Even a failed attempt is beneficial because it primes the mind to absorb the correct answer more deeply when you eventually check it. This transforms study into a dynamic feedback loop rather than a warm bath of passive familiarity. It also builds a confidence that is genuinely earned. You are not merely trusting the glow of recognition, you are proving your ability to access the knowledge. A simple method to utilize this is to close the book and explain the idea aloud, or perhaps write a few questions for your future self to answer. The brain learns what it reaches for, not merely what it looks at. Teaching someone else can also reveal what your memory truly holds. When you take on the role of teacher, you cannot hide behind vague recognition. You are forced to build a clear sequence, select appropriate examples, and notice exactly where your explanation begins to fall apart. That moment of wobble is golden, for it shows you the precise edge of what you truly know. Teaching also compels you to translate information into your own words, which creates a more personal and searchable memory trace. If you can explain a concept simply, you have likely built robust connections around it. If you cannot, you have discovered the gap before it has a chance to surprise you later. There is also a motivational shift to consider. Teaching makes learning feel purposeful because you are serving another person, not just collecting information for yourself. That sense of purpose naturally increases your attention. You do not need a formal classroom to use this technique. Teach a friend, talk to a pet, or record a voice note that explains the idea as if it were a short story. Your memory will reveal itself in the process. Writing by hand can deepen learning through the mechanism of slower processing. Handwriting is inherently slower than typing, and that slowness can be a gift. When you cannot capture every single word spoken, you are pushed to summarize, select, and restructure the information. That active processing helps the brain build meaning rather than just creating a transcript. The physical act also adds a unique motor pattern, which can create an extra route back to the information. Many people notice that handwritten notes feel more memorable, even when they are messy. The mess often reflects the thinking process. Typing can encourage passive copying because it is fast and effortless. Copying can look like study while leaving your understanding shallow. Handwriting tends to demand choices. What is the main point? What is the best example? How does this connect to what I already know? Those choices are the work of memory. This does not mean keyboards are bad. It simply means the best notes are the ones that force you to think. When you slow down enough to transform the idea stays. Sleep after studying often helps more than squeezing in extra practice. After you learn something, there is a biological window where the memory is fragile, much like wet paint. More practice can help, but so can stepping away and letting the brain do its behind-the-scenes work. Sleep is powerful here because it reduces new sensory input and gives the brain a chance to stabilize what you have already laid down. That can make tomorrow's recall faster and less effortful, even if you did not touch the material again. You can often feel this when you practice a piece of music. At night it feels clumsy, yet the next day it flows with grace. The improvement can surprise you because it feels unearned, but it is earned, just not by your daytime effort. This is why late-night cramming can backfire. You may gain short-term familiarity, then lose the deeper benefit that comes from rest. Sometimes the smartest study move is simply to stop. Walking can improve recall by calming the nervous system. There is a reason ideas seem to return when you start moving. Walking can lower the body's defensive posture and settle the mind into a more open state. In that state, attention is less clenched and memory retrieval can become easier. Many people experience this as suddenly remembering a name or solving a problem halfway down the street. The movement is steady, the environment changes gently, and the mind has room to wander without being hijacked by screens. That wandering is not wasted time. It allows associations to rise to the surface, especially when you are stuck in a narrow mental loop. Walking also gives the brain a repeating rhythm, which can make speech and thought feel smoother. This is why some people rehearse talks while pacing. The body becomes a metronome for the mind. If recall feels blocked, try walking without forcing the answer. Let your brain search in motion. Often, it finds what sitting could not. Retrieval is a skill, and it improves with practice. Remembering is not only about what was stored, it is also about how well you can reach it. Each time you pull information out of memory, you strengthen the route to it, like wearing a path through tall grass. That is why quizzing yourself often beats rereading, even when rereading feels easier. Ease can be misleading. Struggle during recall can be a sign that the brain is actively rebuilding the pathway. This does not mean you should grind yourself into frustration. It means you should invite the mind to reach, then reward it with the correct answer. Over time, retrieval becomes faster and more reliable, and the knowledge feels more like something you own. This skill also supports confidence in conversation. You are not learning new material in the moment. You are practicing access under real conditions. Memory improves when you treat recall as training, not as a test. One smell can unlock memories you thought were completely gone. Smell has a direct line into brain regions tied to emotion and recall, and it can open doors that words cannot. A faint hint of sunscreen can bring back a childhood car ride. A certain soap can return you to a hallway you have not pictured in decades. This happens because scent cues are often stored alongside the context of daily life. They were present during meals, in homes, through seasons, and with people you loved. One breath can recreate the atmosphere of an earlier time, not just the image of it. Smell is also hard to describe, which means you rarely rehearse it with language. That can keep the memory link quiet until the right cue arrives. It feels like time travel because it is sudden and full-bodied. Your mind is not searching, it is being transported. A short nap can rescue fragile new memories. A nap is like an emergency save button. If you learn something and then your day keeps blasting you with new tasks, those new tasks can crowd out what you just studied. A brief nap reduces that interference and can help protect what is still delicate. People often report waking with a clearer grasp of what felt slippery, especially for names, word pairs, or subtle distinctions. The nap does not need to be long. Even a short dose can shift the brain into a different mode, one that favors stabilization over constant intake. It can also reset attention, which makes the next learning session more efficient. Think of it as closing your eyes to close your mental tabs. You return with fewer windows fighting for space. Naps are not laziness, they are a tool. Used well, they can turn a shaky memory into one that holds, especially when you cannot afford a full night of recovery right away. Exercise can boost memory by improving blood flow and growth. Movement does more than strengthen muscles. It changes the brain's chemistry and circulation in ways that support learning. When your heart rate rises, more blood and oxygen reach brain tissue, and that can sharpen attention in the short term. Over the longer term, exercise can encourage the brain to maintain flexible connections, which supports the ability to learn and adapt. Many people notice this as mental brightness after a workout, not only calm, but clarity. Exercise also helps regulate stress signals, which can otherwise crowd the mind with urgency. That regulation creates a better internal environment for memory formation. The effect can be practical. A walk or a workout before studying can make focus steadier. Regular movement can also help you feel more consistent day to day, which helps learning accumulate rather than resetting each morning. You do not need extreme training. The brain responds to rhythm. A little movement, done often, can be enough to change how well you remember your life. Sunlight timing can affect sleep and memory the next day. Your brain keeps time using light, and that timing influences how alert and mentally sharp you feel. Morning light helps set your internal clock, which can make it easier to fall asleep at night. When sleep timing stabilizes, memory benefits because your brain gets consistent recovery and consistent learning windows. Evening light, especially bright indoor light, can push the clock later, which can shorten sleep or shift it into a less refreshing schedule. The next day, you may feel foggy even if you technically slept for hours. It is not only about duration, it is about alignment. This is why a bright morning walk can feel like a reset button and why dimmer evenings can make the mind feel more ready to rest. Light is not just for vision, it is information for your brain's timing system. When timing improves, memory often feels steadier and more reliable. Hydration matters because the brain is sensitive to small shifts. The brain runs on chemistry, and water helps keep that chemistry stable. When you are even mildly dehydrated, attention can become less steady, and attention is what memory needs to form new traces. You might feel this as mental drag, slower word retrieval, or impatience with tasks that require focus. Hydration also supports blood volume, which affects how efficiently oxygen and nutrients are delivered. You do not need to be severely dehydrated to notice a change. Small shifts can be enough to make studying feel harder than it should. The tricky part is that thirst is not always a reliable early warning. Some people get used to running a little dry and assume that fog is normal. Often, it is not. A glass of water will not turn you into a genius, but it can remove a quiet obstacle. When the brain's internal environment is steadier, memory formation becomes less of a struggle and more of a flow. Forgetting is an active brain process, not a simple failure. Forgetting can look like loss, but often it is the brain doing purposeful cleanup. Every day brings a flood of inputs. If you stored them all with equal strength, you would struggle to find what matters. The brain weakens some connections on purpose, especially when information is outdated, repeated too often without meaning, or linked to distractions. This act of pruning clears space and reduces interference, which makes important memories easier to reach. Forgetting also protects flexibility. It helps you update beliefs when the world changes instead of being trapped by old predictions. Even in learning, forgetting can be useful. It creates effort during recall, and effort can strengthen what you retrieve. So, a blank moment is not always a sign of decay. Sometimes it is a sign of sorting. Your mind is choosing signal over noise, even when it feels inconvenient. Sleep is when the brain files memories for long-term storage. During sleep, your brain is not going idle. It is running a night shift that sorts, strengthens, and reorganizes what you experienced. Some memories get replayed in compressed bursts, which helps move them from a fragile form into more stable networks. Other details get trimmed away, which can feel like forgetting, but often improves clarity. Sleep also helps separate what matters from what was noise, so tomorrow's brain is less cluttered. That is one reason a problem can feel simpler after a good night. It is not magic. It is the brain reshaping what it learned, so it is easier to use later. When sleep is cut short, the filing work gets rushed or skipped. The next day, you can still function, but your mind is carrying loose papers instead of organized folders. A familiar song can resurrect a whole chapter of life. Sometimes it happens in the first two notes. Your body reacts before your mind explains why. Suddenly, you are back in a specific year with a specific person, in a specific car, with the air smelling a certain way. This is because songs are often replayed during repeated routines, commutes, parties, breakups, or summer jobs. The brain binds the music to that slice of life through repetition. Later, the song becomes a trigger that carries many cues at once. Timing, emotion, and context arrive together like a wave. What feels magical is that the memory is not reconstructed slowly. It returns as a complete atmosphere. People with dementia sometimes show this dramatically. A person who struggles to name family members may sing along perfectly, then speak with new clarity for a moment. The song is not only entertainment, it is a storage handle, and it can pull up a deep drawer you forgot existed. Multitasking slices attention, and memory pays the price. Doing two things at once often feels productive, yet the brain is usually switching, not sharing. Each switch has a cost. You lose a bit of the thread, then you spend energy rebuilding it. That rebuilding can be invisible, but it shows up as mistakes, missing details, and weaker recall later. It is why you can read a page while half watching a video and realize you absorbed neither. It is also why driving while distracted is so dangerous. The mind cannot fully encode what it never fully attended to over time. Constant switching can make everything feel shallow. You touched many tasks, but you did not sink into any of them long enough to form strong memory traces. Single tasking is not a moral virtue. It is a biological advantage. Depth of focus gives the brain clean material to store and clear paths to retrieve. Stress hormones can glue some moments into memory and erase others. Under stress, the brain shifts into a mode built for survival. Chemicals surge that sharpen attention and prepare the body to act. If the stress is moderate and brief, the brain may tag the moment as important and store it strongly. That is why people can remember where they were during a frightening event. But when stress becomes intense or prolonged, memory can fracture. You might remember a few sharp snapshots yet lose the sequence around them. Later, you may struggle to recall ordinary details from the same day. This is not weakness, it is triage. The brain is prioritizing quick learning over rich storytelling. It is also why calm repetition helps learning more than panic does. A stressed brain is trying to escape. A steady brain is able to study. The memory you get depends on the state you are in. Your memories are rebuilt each time you recall them, not replayed. When you remember something, your brain is not pulling a file off a shelf. It is reassembling a scene from pieces, like rebuilding a song from a few notes and rhythms. The strange part is that this rebuilding makes the memory temporarily flexible. New details can slip in, and old details can drift out. A question, a mood, or a later conversation can change what feels true about the earlier moment. Then, the updated version gets stored again. Over years, this can turn a sharp memory into a smoother story that fits who you are now. It is not proof that your mind is broken. It is proof that memory is designed for meaning, not perfect recording. Some people remember almost every day of their lives. A small number of people have an ability often called highly superior autobiographical memory. They can look at a date and tell you what day of the week it was, what they did, and even what the weather felt like. Their recall can be fast and detailed, like a personal calendar that never stops updating. It can sound like a superpower, but it is not always pleasant. Many describe it as relentless. Embarrassing moments, grief, and old arguments can return with the same force as the day they happened. Forgetting is usually a gift because it lets emotions fade and leaves room for the present. With this kind of recall, the past can feel crowded. Researchers are still debating why it happens. It may involve unusual habits of reflection or differences in how memories are organized and retrieved. Either way, it reveals how wide the human memory spectrum truly is. Others lack mental imagery, yet still form strong memories. Some people do not see pictures in their mind when they imagine. Ask them to visualize a beach and they understand the idea, but there is no internal movie. This experience is called aphantasia, and it can surprise people who assumed everyone's mind works the same way. Yet these individuals can still remember their lives, recognize loved ones, and learn complex skills. Their memories may lean more on concepts, relationships, and verbal detail. Instead of replaying a scene, they might recall what happened in a structured outline. They may be excellent at facts and reasoning, even if they cannot summon a vivid image. This shows something important. Memory is not one format. It is a collection of formats, and the brain can store life using different types of representation. If your mind is not a cinema, it can still be a library, a map, or a soundtrack. You can form a new memory in under a second. A single glance can be enough for your brain to stamp in something new. It might be a face at a doorway, a sudden warming, or a surprising word that catches your attention. In that instant, networks of neurons shift their timing together, like a crowd clapping into the same beat. The brain is always sampling the world, but only a few moments get promoted into something you can recall later. Surprise helps. Relevance helps. So does emotion, because it tells your mind that this moment may matter again. This speed is a survival feature. It lets you learn fast from danger, opportunity, and social cues. Then minutes later, you might swear you always knew it. That is how quickly the mind can update itself. People often remember the feeling of events more than details. Many memories keep an emotional fingerprint even after the facts blur. You might forget the exact words of a conversation, yet you still remember feeling dismissed, protected, or understood. That feeling can steer your future choices, including who you trust and what you avoid. It can also trick you. Two people can leave the same event with different emotional takeaways. Then each one feels sure their version is the true one. This happens because the brain stores meaning efficiently. It keeps what helped you predict the world last time. In everyday life, this is why nostalgia can be so powerful. A simple place can bring back warmth even when the timeline is fuzzy. Your mind is often saving the verdict, not the transcript. Your brain can invent vivid memories that feel completely real. The mind is a powerful simulator. It can create a memory-like experience from imagination, suggestion, and expectation. Then, it can mislabel that creation as something you lived. This can happen innocently. You hear a story many times and you start picturing it in detail. Later, the picture feels familiar, and familiarity can masquerade as truth. It can also happen when you fill gaps. You remember arriving at a party, but not the first minutes. Your brain supplies a likely scene, and soon it feels like a genuine recollection. The danger is not that you are gullible. The danger is that memory uses the same machinery as imagination, and both can feel vivid. That vividness is not a lie detector. It is a graphics engine. It can render scenes that never happened, Memory lives across networks, not in one single brain spot. It is tempting to imagine a memory stored in one tiny place, like a file in a folder. In reality, a memory is a pattern spread across many regions that specialize in different parts of experience. Visual areas contribute what you saw. Auditory areas contribute what you heard. Body and emotion systems contribute what you felt. The memory is the coordination among them. This is why a brain injury can change one aspect of recall while leaving another intact. A person might recognize a voice but not the face, or remember the layout of a room but not the conversation inside it. It also explains why strong memories can return from unexpected cues. The network has many entry points. You do not need the whole pattern to begin. You need one strong thread, and the brain can pull the rest into place. You carry multiple memory systems, each with different strengths. Your mind does not use one single kind of memory for everything. It uses different systems that evolved for different jobs. One system helps you remember personal episodes, including where you were and what it felt like. Another stores general knowledge, including words, rules, and facts that no longer feel tied to a first moment. Another handles skills like typing or riding a bike, which can stay strong even when you cannot explain how you do them. These systems can disagree. You can know a person's name but fail to retrieve it. You can perform a skill smoothly while your mind goes blank under pressure. This variety is a feature. It gives you backup routes. When one pathway is tired or stressed, another can still carry you. Memory is not one treasure chest, it is a whole toolkit. Short-term memory holds a few chunks, then quickly fades. What you can hold in mind for a few seconds is surprisingly small, and it is meant to be temporary. If someone tells you a new phone number and you do not use it right away, it can vanish almost instantly. The brain treats this space like a scratch pad because keeping everything would be inefficient. What makes it feel larger is chunking. A string of separate digits becomes a familiar pattern like a birthday or an area code. The moment you rehearse it or connect it to meaning, it has a chance to last. If you get interrupted, it often collapses. That is why you walk into a room and forget what you came for. Your mind had a fragile intention. Then something new replaced it before it could stick. Working memory is your mind's notepad, and it fills fast. This is the mental workspace that lets you juggle pieces of information while you think. It holds the start of a sentence while you plan the end. It lets you do math in your head by keeping track of intermediate steps. It is also why distractions hurt so much. A single notification can steal the notepad, and your half-formed idea slips away. Working memory is not only about storage. It is about control. It decides what stays in focus and what gets pushed aside. That makes it feel like a tension with muscle. When it is overloaded, you may feel mentally clumsy. Even if you are intelligent and well-rested, the world becomes harder to track. The good news is that you can support it with simple tricks like external notes and clear sequencing, which frees the brain to reason instead of juggle. Long-term memories change shape as they settle over time. In the days after you learn something, the brain keeps working on it, and the result can be a memory that feels different from the original moment. Details may soften while the core meaning becomes easier to access. A new skill can start out effortful and then feel automatic later. Even if you practice less than you think you need, this settling is part of how the brain makes knowledge useful. It weaves new information into what you already know, so it can guide future choices quickly. Sometimes the memory becomes more general, like a lesson extracted from a messy experience. Other times it becomes more connected, so one idea triggers another with less effort. That is why you can suddenly understand a topic days later without revisiting it. The brain has been quietly organizing. Episodic memory lets you mentally time travel to your past. You can place yourself back into a moment and re-experience it with a sense of being there. That is not just remembering facts, it is remembering a scene. You might recall the angle of sunlight, the sound in the background, and the feeling in your chest when something changed. This ability is deeply tied to imagination because the brain uses similar tools to build a future scene. When you plan a trip, you are rehearsing a possible episode before it exists. That overlap is useful. It lets you learn from the past and simulate what might happen next. It can also explain why certain memories feel like sudden arrivals. A small trigger brings back a full internal world. Episodic memory is not a museum. It is a navigation system that helps you move through life using lived experience as a map. Semantic memory stores facts even when you forget learning them. Most of what you know has no clear origin story in your mind. You know that fire is hot, that winter is colder than summer, and that words have meanings. You probably cannot recall the moment you learned any of it. That is semantic memory at work. It stores knowledge in a way that is detached from a specific time and place, which is exactly what makes it powerful. It turns experience into usable information that can travel anywhere with you. This system also explains a common frustration. You can recognize that you know something, yet you cannot access it quickly. The knowledge is there, but the path to it is temporarily blocked. Then it pops out later, often when you stop trying. Semantic memory is like a library without checkout receipts. The books remain even when the story of acquisition fades away. Procedural memory lets your body remember skills without words. Some learning sinks below explanation. You can balance on a bicycle, catch a ball, or type a familiar word without narrating each movement. Try to describe every muscle action and you will sound absurd because the knowledge is stored as a practice pattern. This is why skills can survive stress in surprising ways. A performer may forget a line, yet their hands still find the correct notes. It is also why early practice can feel awkward. Your brain is building a reliable routine, and it needs repetition to tune timing and coordination. Once the pattern is built, it runs fast and with little conscious effort. That frees your mind to focus on goals like the road ahead instead of the pedals. Procedural memory is a quiet intelligence. It is learning that lives in doing, not in telling, and it can be remarkably durable across time. Priming can tilt your choices using memories you never noticed. Your brain is constantly preparing you to respond, and sometimes it does it with subtle nudges you do not feel. If you see a word, a color, or a familiar shape, related ideas can become easier to access for a short time. That can change how fast you recognize something, what you interpret as normal, and what you choose next. You might walk past a bakery and suddenly crave something sweet, even if you were not hungry moments before. The cue has activated a network linked to past experiences of taste and reward. Priming is not mind control. It is the brain doing what it always does, using recent input to predict what matters next. Most of the time, it helps you move quickly through the world. It becomes eerie only when you notice it. Then you realize your mind is being guided by echoes you did not consciously record. Context can decide what you remember and what stays hidden. Memory retrieval often depends on matching the situation where the memory was formed. A scent, a room, or even a certain kind of background noise can make recall smoother. That is why you can struggle to remember a detail at one desk. Then it returns as soon as you step outside. The brain stores information alongside surroundings because surroundings help locate the right file. Students sometimes notice this when they study in one place and test in another. The knowledge is there, but the cues are different. Context includes internal state, too. If you learn something while calm, you may retrieve it more easily when calm again. This does not mean your memory is fragile. It means it is organized. The brain uses context like a set of labels. Change the labels and searching takes longer. restore them, and the memory becomes strangely effortless. A single cue can pull a whole scene back to life. Sometimes one small detail acts like a key that opens an entire room. You hear a particular laugh, and suddenly you remember the restaurant, the table, and what you were wearing. The brain stores experiences as linked patterns, so activating one strong piece can ignite the rest. This is why certain objects feel loaded. A ticket stub can bring back the day it came from, even if you have not thought about it in years. It is also why memory can feel involuntary. You did not choose to remember because the cue did the choosing for you. In everyday life, this linking is helpful. It lets you make quick sense of a situation by retrieving a related past experience. It can also surprise you with forgotten chapters, which return not as facts, but as atmosphere. One cue, then a whole world. The hippocampus helps bind experiences into coherent episodes. Think of a day as a scatter of sights, sounds, and moments. This structure helps stitch those pieces into a single event you can later revisit. Without that binding, you might remember fragments without a clear scene, a laugh with no room attached to it, a face with no story. This is why damage here can leave people able to hold a conversation, yet unable to form new today, memories that hang together. It is also why place can be such a powerful anchor. The brain's internal map-making links what happened with where it happened, turning a street corner into a chapter marker. When the binding works well, you do not just recall information. You re-enter an episode with a beginning, a middle, and a sense of, that was me back then. Moving through time, the amygdala tags memories with emotional importance. Some moments arrive with a built-in spotlight, a near miss in traffic, a sudden shout, a message that changes everything. This system helps decide fast that something matters. Then it boosts the chances that the moment will stick. It is not trying to make you dramatic, it is trying to keep you safe. That emotional tag can make certain details feel sharper, like the sound of a voice or the look on a face. Later, even a small reminder can bring the feeling rushing back, sometimes faster than the story. This is why fear learning can be so stubborn and why comfort linked to safety can be so soothing. The tag is not a guarantee of accuracy, it is a priority stamp. Your brain is saying, remember this. It might protect you later. The prefrontal cortex guides what gets remembered right now. While you listen, your mind is constantly choosing what deserves a spot in memory. This part of the brain acts like a director. It points the camera. It decides whether you hold on to a name, a step in a plan, or the thread of a conversation. When you are tired, distracted, or overwhelmed, the directing power weakens. You may take in the words yet fail to store them in a usable way. This is also why strategies work. Rephrasing something in your own words, asking a question, or setting a clear goal gives the director a reason to keep the material active. It is not only about intelligence, it is about control. The mind remembers better when it knows what it is trying to do and why it matters in the moment. The cerebellum quietly refines motor memories through repetition. When you practice a skill, improvement often feels mysterious. One day you wobble, another day your body just knows. This region helps fine-tune movements by tracking tiny errors, then adjusting timing and force on the next attempt. You can see it in simple learning, like adapting to a new computer mouse or throwing a ball slightly farther each try. The lesson is stored in the body's calibration, not in a spoken explanation. That is why you can get better without feeling like you are thinking harder. It is also why practice needs feedback. A wrong note, a missed step, a late swing. The brain uses the mistake as a measurement, then quietly updates the next performance. Over time, the motion becomes smoother, more efficient, and less tiring. Repetition is not mindless here. It is the raw material for precision. Memory relies on synapses changing their strength over time. Between neurons are tiny connection points where signals pass. Learning changes how strongly those signals travel. After a meaningful experience, the same pathway can become easier to activate, like a trail that is packed down by repeated footsteps. This is one reason practice works and why a single powerful experience can leave a lasting mark. The change is not just electrical. Cells can adjust receptors, release chemicals differently, and remodel the connection itself. That is how remembering becomes physical. It is not stored as a single object. It is stored as a tendency for certain patterns to happen again. This also explains why memory can fade. If a pathway is not used, it can weaken, and competing pathways can take over. Your brain is always balancing stability with flexibility, strengthening what proves useful and letting other links soften. New connections form and older ones can be pruned away. Your brain is not trying to keep everything forever. It is trying to keep what helps you function. When you learn something new, networks can grow fresh branches, making new routes for information. At the same time, the brain can trim connections that are noisy, unused, or inefficient. This trimming is not a tragedy. It is maintenance. It makes signaling cleaner and reduces confusion between similar memories. You can feel this in skill learning. Early on, many approaches compete. Later, the best route wins and the others fade. Development is full of this process too. As children grow, the brain keeps the connections that match the environment they actually live in. Then it lets go of others. It is like sculpting, more material at first, then careful shaping. What remains is often faster, sharper, and better tuned to real life. Your brain rewires itself when learning becomes meaningful. A fact you half hear can disappear. A fact that connects to your life can settle in and stay, meaning acts like glue because it ties new information to existing networks. If you learn a medical term because a loved one needs care, it suddenly has weight. If you learn a street layout because you are exploring a new city alone, it becomes part of your personal map. The brain is not only storing content, it is storing relevance. This is why stories teach so well. They give information a purpose, a sequence, and a reason to care. It is also why learning can accelerate once you find the hook. The moment a topic feels connected to identity, curiosity, or need. Attention changes. Effort feels lighter. Practice feels worthwhile. The brain starts building stronger roots because it expects to use them again. Attention is the doorway that decides what can be remembered. You cannot store what your mind never truly takes in. Attention is the gatekeeper that decides which signals become learning and which dissolve into background noise. This is why you can miss something obvious right in front of you when your focus is elsewhere. The world is full of information, but your brain has to be selective or it would drown. When attention lands on something, the brain enriches it. Details become clearer. Time can feel slower. The moment has a better chance of becoming a memory you can retrieve later. This also means memory is not only about the past, it is about the present. If you want something to stick, the most powerful move is often simple. Slow down. Look again. Listen as if it matters. The doorway opens wider when you stop rushing past your own experience. Curiosity boosts learning by priming the brain's reward systems. Curiosity is not just a feeling. It is a mental state that changes how you take in information. When you genuinely want to know the answer, your attention becomes steadier and your mind becomes more willing to explore. You start noticing clues and you tolerate uncertainty longer. That matters because uncertainty is where learning lives. Curiosity also makes new information feel like a payoff, not a chore. It turns study into a hunt. Even small questions can do this. Why does a word mean what it means? How does a magician hide the move? What happens inside a seed before it sprouts? When the answer arrives, it lands in a brain that has already prepared a space for it. This is why good teachers ask questions before giving explanations. Curiosity opens the mental envelope so the message actually gets delivered. Dopamine helps mark experiences as worth remembering later. This chemical is often described as a pleasure signal, but its bigger job is teaching your brain what to pay attention to next time. When something is surprising, rewarding, or meaningful, dopamine helps stamp it as important. That stamp can turn an ordinary moment into a lasting lesson. Think about learning a new route home. The first time you spot a strange landmark, your mind lights up and the scene sticks. Or imagine finally understanding a confusing idea. The relief and excitement act like a signal that says, "Keep this." Dopamine also supports motivation, which means it can pull you back toward practice before you forget. When that system is underpowered, learning can feel flat and memories can feel less sticky. Your brain is not only recording life, it is constantly ranking it. Novelty makes memory stick by waking up alerting networks. Your brain treats the new as potentially important because new things could be threats or opportunities. When you encounter something unfamiliar, attention sharpens and perception becomes richer. That extra clarity gives memory better material to store. It is why your first days somewhere often feel vivid even years later. The strange hallway, the new faces, the small details you would normally ignore. Novelty also helps the brain separate one day from another. Routines blur together because the cues are similar. A new experience breaks that blur, and your mind creates a fresh folder for it. This does not mean you need constant excitement to remember. It means small changes can help. A new study spot, a different walking route, or a new example can wake the mind up. Memory loves the feeling of first time. Emotion can sharpen central details while blurring the edges. Strong emotion is like a zoom lens. It can lock onto what matters most, then let the background fade. In a tense moment, you might remember the expression on someone's face with perfect clarity, yet forget what song was playing or what the room looked like. Your brain is prioritizing the core signal because that is what helps you respond. Later, this can create an odd confidence. The center feels so vivid that you assume the surrounding details must be accurate too, but the edges are often guessed. This is one reason arguments can persist. People agree that something felt intense, but they disagree about the sequence or the exact words. Emotion makes memory powerful yet selective. It is not trying to preserve every detail for history. It is trying to preserve the part that felt urgent so you learn quickly and adapt. Awe can expand your sense of time and deepen recall. Awe is the feeling you get when something is bigger than your usual mental frame. A sky full of stars, a vast canyon, a piece of music that makes you stop breathing for a second. In that state, the mind often slows down, attention widens, and ordinary worries feel small. That shift can leave a strong imprint because the moment is processed more deeply than routine life. People often remember where they stood, what they noticed, and what changed inside them. Awe can also make a memory feel longer than it actually was, because you took in more detail per second. It is like recording at a higher resolution. This is why travel memories can feel rich, especially when they include wonder. Awe is not just an emotion. It is a mental mode that says, take this in fully. Something important is happening in your mind. Fear memories can form quickly and fade slowly. Fear learning is built for speed because hesitation can be costly. One frightening encounter can be enough to create a lasting association. A dog that lunges, a stair that collapses, a sudden medical scare. The brain links cues from the situation to danger, so you will react faster next time. The slow fading is protective too. If something was truly risky, it makes sense to stay cautious for a while. The problem is that the brain can sometimes learn too broadly. You might avoid every barking dog, not just the one that scared you. Or you might feel tense in any similar hallway, even when it is safe. This is where gentle relearning matters. Safe exposure, trusted support, and repeated calm experiences can teach the brain a new pattern. Fear memories are stubborn because survival matters, yet they can be reshaped with time, patience, and evidence. Laughter can strengthen memory by lowering stress and tension. When you laugh, your body shifts out of a threat posture. Muscles soften, breathing changes, stress signals ease. That calmer internal state supports learning because the brain can spend resources on encoding rather than guarding. Humor also creates a hook. A funny twist makes information distinctive, and distinctive things are easier to retrieve later. That is why you might remember a teacher's joke decades after forgetting the worksheet. Laughter can also bond people, and shared attention helps memory form. When a whole room laughs together, everyone is focused on the same moment. The brain loves that kind of synchronized focus. This is not about being cheerful all the time. It is about using play as a learning tool. Humor marks a moment as safe, and safety gives the brain permission to store details. Sometimes the shortest path to remembering is not pressure, it is relief. Music can anchor memories through rhythm and repetition. Music is structured in a way the brain finds easy to grab. Rhythm creates timing. Melody creates a path. Repetition creates reinforcement without feeling like work. That is why people remember lyrics they have not sung in years. The song carries the words even when you cannot recall them on purpose. Music also links to emotion, which makes the anchor heavier. A song from a first love can bring back not only the scene, but the mood, the confidence, and the ache. Because music unfolds over time, it also becomes a container for time. Verse by verse, it can reopen a sequence of memories in order. This is why music therapy can reach people. When ordinary conversation fails, the brain can lose access to many routes, yet the musical route stays open. A familiar tune can act like a key, and the mind turns it without effort. Social connection can make shared moments easier to remember. Human memory is tuned for social life because relationships are survival. When you feel connected, attention often becomes steadier and emotion becomes more balanced, which helps encoding. Shared experiences also get rehearsed. Friends retell the story, and each retelling strengthens access like polishing a stone until it shines. There is also a cueing effect. One person remembers the setting, another remembers the dialogue, and together the full scene becomes easier to retrieve. Even facial expressions help. When you watch someone react, your brain stores not just the event, but its meaning for the group. This is why communal rituals can be unforgettable. Birthdays, weddings, team wins, and even shared grief can become landmark memories. Connection tells the brain, this matters beyond you. It ties the moment to identity and belonging, and that makes it stick with surprising strength. Loneliness can make memory feel foggier and less reliable. When you are isolated, the brain can shift into a state of vigilance. It becomes more sensitive to threat and less open to exploration. That state can steal attention, which is the raw material memory needs. Loneliness can also reduce the everyday rehearsal that keeps memories accessible. Without conversation, fewer stories get retold and fewer details get refreshed. Over time, days can start to blend because fewer moments stand out as socially meaningful. This can create a cruel loop. Foggy memory makes social interaction feel harder, and that can deepen withdrawal. The hopeful part is that connection can reverse the pattern. Even small, consistent contact can sharpen attention and restore a sense of structure to time. Memory is not only a private ability, it is a social one. We remember ourselves through other people, And when that mirror is missing, the mind can feel less clear about its own story. Your brain edits memories to fit the story you expect. The mind loves a coherent storyline, even when real life was messy. If you believe you are unlucky, you may recall the failures more easily than the quiet wins. If you believe someone is rude, your memory may spotlight their sharp moments and blur their kindness. This happens because memory is guided by schemas, which are your internal templates for how the world usually works. They help you move fast, but they also reshape recall. When details do not fit, the brain can smooth them so the story makes sense. Later, the edited version feels like a faithful record. This is why two siblings can remember the same childhood so differently. They are not only recalling events, they are recalling a narrative about what those events meant. The memory you carry is often the one that best supports your current model of the world. Confidence in a memory is not proof. It is accurate. A memory can feel bright, crisp, and certain, then still be wrong about key details. Confidence is influenced by fluency, which is how easily information comes to mind. If a story is rehearsed, it becomes smoother to tell. Smoothness feels like truth. Emotion can add the same illusion. A memory tied to anger or pride can feel powerful, and power can be mistaken for accuracy. Social feedback matters too. If people nod along when you tell a story, your certainty can rise even if the story has drifted. This is why confident eyewitnesses can still make mistakes. The mind uses confidence as a feeling, not a measurement tool. It is more like a volume knob than a truth meter. You can respect your memories and still treat them with curiosity. The most reliable approach is to separate certainty from evidence, even in your own mind. Eyewitness memory can be reshaped by a single suggestion. After an event, the brain is still assembling what happened. That makes it vulnerable to outside influence, especially when the influence sounds reasonable. If someone asks, "Did you see the knife?" your mind may begin searching for a knife-shaped detail, even if there was none. Later, the question can become part of the memory. This is not stupidity. It is how memory integrates information while trying to build a coherent account. Authority increases the effect. A confident interviewer, a leading headline, or a friend who speaks with certainty can quietly steer recall. The more times the suggestion is repeated, the more familiar it feels, and familiarity can become belief. This is why careful interviewing is so important in investigations. The goal is not only to hear the memory, the goal is to avoid accidentally writing new sentences into it. The brain fills gaps with best guesses, then believes them. Your memory is not a continuous video recording of your life. It is more accurately described as a series of snapshots with missing frames in between. When you attempt to recall a past event, your brain employs logic, habits, and probability to fill in the blanks. For instance, if you remember walking into a cafe, your mind may automatically insert the detail of ordering at the counter, even if you actually sat down first. These guesses can feel like genuine recollections because they are constructed from your real knowledge of how the world typically works. Over time, this filled-in version becomes your default memory. You eventually stop noticing which parts came from direct perception and which came from inference. This process is known as confabulation when it becomes extreme, but a milder version happens to everyone in everyday life. It explains why memory can be so persuasive even when it is partly constructed. The mind is not lying to you. It is simply completing a pattern because it would rather deliver a whole story than admit that it does not know. Misinformation has a way of blending into memory as if it had always been there. After a significant event, people naturally seek explanations, and these explanations can spread rapidly. A rumor, a misleading caption, or a confident retelling by someone else can slip into your own memory, especially if you only encountered the event in fragments. Once this new detail is attached, it can feel original to you. You might remember hearing a specific phrase in a speech when, in reality, you read it later in a commentary. You might even remember seeing smoke in a photograph when the smoke was added by your imagination after hearing others describe it. The danger here is not just external lies, but the way memory naturally updates itself. The brain treats new information as a potential correction. It then merges this new info with what it has already stored. Social media can accelerate this process because repetition creates familiarity, and familiarity creates comfort. The best defense is simple, though it is hard to practice. Pause before you share and ask where the detail came from. Your memory deserves clean inputs. Photographs can fundamentally change what you remember about real events. Photos feel like proof, yet they can quietly rewrite your memory. A picture captures only one angle, 1 second, and one specific mood. When you look at it repeatedly, that image can become the core of your recollection. You may start remembering the photograph rather than the event itself. Details that lie outside the frame begin to fade, even if they mattered significantly at the time. Photos can also suggest emotions that may not have been present. A posed smile can make a day feel happier in your memory than it actually felt while you were living it. Family albums do this constantly. They curate what is worth remembering, and then the brain follows that curation. This is not always a bad thing. Photos can preserve connection and help you recall people and places you would otherwise lose. Still, it is worth noticing what a camera cannot record. The smell, the tension, the awkward pauses, and your private thoughts rarely make it into the frame. Yet they were real. A photo is merely a lens, not a full witness. Repetition can create a sense of familiarity that feels like truth. If you hear something again and again, your brain stops treating it as new, and it becomes easier to process. That ease of processing can be mistaken for accuracy. This is why slogans work and why catchy myths survive. You do not have to believe the claim at first, you just have to encounter it repeatedly. Over time, the statement begins to feel normal, and then normal begins to feel true. This is called the illusory truth effect, and it is a memory phenomenon as much as it is a persuasion phenomenon. Familiarity is a strong cue that something is safe and known, so the brain leans toward it. In everyday life, this can be harmless, like preferring a song you have heard before. In information environments, however, it can be dangerous because it rewards repetition over evidence. A practical trick is to notice the feeling of ease and then treat it as a warning label. Smooth is not the same as correct. Two people can remember the same moment in opposite ways. Memory is filtered through our goals, fears, and attention. In the same conversation, one person may focus on the tone while the other focuses on the content. One may remember feeling cornered while the other remembers feeling unheard. Later, both accounts can be sincere, yet both can conflict. This is not only bias, it is also perspective. Each brain records what it needed most in that moment. Even physical position matters. If you stood near the doorway, you may remember the interruption at the door. If you faced the window, you may remember the storm outside. Then time adds another layer. Each retelling selects certain details, and that selection becomes emphasis. The emphasized details become the spine of the memory. This is why conflict resolution often improves when people stop arguing about what happened and start describing what they noticed. Two memories can be incompatible as stories while still being compatible as human experiences. Memory favors meaning over perfect recording. The brain is trying to help you survive and navigate, not archive your life for a courtroom. It compresses experience into lessons, patterns, and takeaways. That is why you might remember the point of a book, but not the exact sentences. It is why you can recall that a neighborhood felt unsafe without remembering every building. Meaning is portable. It can guide future choices quickly. Perfect detail is heavy, slow, and often unnecessary. This preference can be helpful because it allows you to generalize. You learn that stoves burn even if every stove looks different. You learn what kindness feels like even when it appears in new forms. The downside is that details can be swapped, blended, or lost, especially when events are similar. Still, the meaning-first design is one reason humans can learn so much so fast from limited experience. Your memory is a teacher, not a camera. The more you retell a memory, the more it changes. Every retelling is a new performance, and performances drift. You emphasize the funny part for one audience, and then it becomes the main part. You simplify the timeline so the story lands cleanly. Then, the simplified version becomes what you remember. You might borrow a phrase someone else used because it fits, and soon it feels like your own original wording. This is not necessarily deception. It is narrative adaptation. The brain is optimizing the story for communication, and communication shapes storage. Over years, a memory can become less about what happened and more about what the story has become in your life. That can be beautiful because stories build identity and connection. It can also create false certainty because a polished story feels solid. If you want to keep a memory closer to the original, vary how you revisit it. Write it once for yourself without performance. Notice what you are tempted to edit. The edits are clues to what matters to you now. Flashbulb memories feel vivid yet still contain errors. Some moments feel like they were photographed by the mind. You can picture where you stood, who spoke first, and the exact heaviness in the air. These are often tied to shocking news or sudden change. The vividness can be so strong that it feels untouchable. Yet studies find that even these memories drift over time. People stay confident even as their details quietly shift. What changes most is not the emotional core, but the surrounding facts. The brain protects the feeling of, "I will never forget this," because that feeling helps you learn. It also helps you share the story with others. Retelling makes it smoother, and smoothness increases certainty. The result is a memory that feels like crystal while it is still being shaped. Vividness is a spotlight, not a guarantee. Trauma can fragment memory into sensations and flashes. During extreme threat, the brain may prioritize survival actions over building a neat storyline. Later, the event can return in pieces instead of paragraphs. A smell, a sound, or a body sensation can arrive without warning. Some people remember a few sharp images yet struggle to place them in order. That fragmentation can feel frightening because it suggests something is missing. In reality, it can be the imprint of a brain that was overwhelmed and running on emergency mode. The body may store the alarm even when the mind cannot narrate the full sequence. This is why certain places or tones of voice can trigger intense reactions that feel out of proportion. The trigger is not creating new fear. It is touching an old circuit that never got fully integrated into a calm story. Healing often involves rebuilding context, so the memory becomes less like a siren and more like history. Aphantasia can change how memory feels, not what you know. For many people, remembering includes a sense of reliving. They can picture the room, the colors, and the face across the table. With aphantasia, that sensory reliving may be absent, which can make memory feel more distant. Yet, knowledge can remain strong. A person may know exactly what they experienced, even if they cannot mentally rehearse it. This difference can affect how nostalgia works. Someone might miss a person deeply while still lacking a vivid inner portrait. It can also affect dreams, though not always in the same way for everyone. Some people with aphantasia report visual dreams, while others do not. What stays consistent is that the condition reveals a separation between imagery and understanding. You can remember without pictures. You can plan without visual scenes. It is a reminder that what feels like memory is partly a style of consciousness, and styles vary. The facts of your life do not require a mental slideshow to be real. Synesthesia can tie memories to colors, tastes, or shapes. In synesthesia, the brain blends senses in consistent, automatic ways. A person might hear a musical note and experience a specific color. They might see letters and feel that each one has its own shade or texture. For some, numbers have personalities or positions in space. These cross-sensory links can become powerful memory cues. If a word always feels blue, it becomes easier to spot when it is missing or wrong. If a day of the week has a distinct color, schedules can be remembered in a more structured way. Synesthesia does not make someone smarter by default, but it can create extra hooks for recall. It adds a second label to information, like tagging a file with both a name and a color. Researchers think it may involve unusual connectivity between brain regions that usually keep sensory pathways more separate. It is a vivid example of how perception and memory can intertwine. People with prosopagnosia may forget faces but remember voices. Prosopagnosia, often called face blindness, makes facial recognition unusually difficult. A person can see a face clearly, yet it does not register as familiar, even when it belongs to a close friend. Instead, recognition often shifts to other cues. Voice becomes crucial, as do gait, hairstyle, clothing, or context. Someone might know who you are the moment you speak, or still feel uncertain when you silently wave. This condition reveals that recognition is not one ability. It is a set of parallel systems, and faces are a specialized domain. For most people, face memory feels effortless, which hides how complex it is. Prosopagnosia makes that complexity visible. It can be developmental, meaning present from early life, or acquired after brain injury. Many people with it become expert detectives of non-face clues, building social memory through sound and pattern rather than features. It is a striking reminder that identity is stored in many channels. The brain can store skills even when facts disappear. There are cases where a person cannot remember meeting you, yet they can learn a new motor skill over repeated sessions. They may swear they have never done the task before, then perform it better each time. This split shows that skill learning can be stored separately from the kind of memory that records life events. It is why habits can outlast stories. You can forget the first time you drove a car, yet still drive. You can lose the memory of piano lessons, yet your fingers find patterns on the keys. In everyday life, this is why practice can feel like it sinks in even when you cannot explain what you learned. The how is being updated beneath awareness. This is also why rehabilitation can work after certain injuries. The brain can build new procedural routes even when episodic recall is unreliable. It is a hopeful fact about resilience because it means learning has multiple doors. Amnesia can erase new memories while sparing old ones. Some forms of amnesia affect the ability to form new, long-lasting memories, while earlier memories remain relatively intact. A person might vividly describe childhood, yet struggle to remember what happened an hour ago. They can carry on a conversation, then later have no recollection of it. This pattern reveals that memory is not a single container that fills from birth onward. It is a process that requires specific brain systems to stabilize new experience. When those systems are disrupted, the mind can live in a repeating present. What remains most heartbreaking is that emotion can still be felt. A person may feel comforted by a visitor even if they cannot later name them. That shows that different parts of memory and feeling can travel on separate tracks. Amnesia also challenges our assumptions about identity. If you cannot build new chapters, you are still you, but your story stops updating in the usual way. It forces a deep question about what continuity truly means. In rare cases, memories return as sudden islands of clarity. Sometimes memory loss is not permanent. People can experience moments where recall returns sharply, like a fog lifting in one bright patch. It might happen after a seizure resolves, after a delirium clears, or as a brain injury heals. The striking part is the suddenness. A person can go from confusion to recognizing family, recalling names, and describing recent events in a rush of coherence. These episodes can be brief or lasting, and they can be emotionally intense for everyone involved. They remind us that the brain is dynamic, not static. Access can change as chemistry, sleep, inflammation, or network stability changes. Even in ordinary life, smaller versions happen. A forgotten detail can snap back when you hear the right word or when you return to a place you have not seen in years. The island feeling suggests that memories can still exist while the routes to them are temporarily blocked. When a route reopens, it can feel like waking up inside your own life. Alzheimer's often steals recent memories before older ones fade. In many people, the earliest losses are not the far past. They are the fresh pages. A conversation from this morning, a new name, a plan made over lunch. Older memories can remain surprisingly available for a while, like well-worn paths that are easier to walk. This pattern can be confusing for families because it looks like time is being peeled backward. One reason is that forming and stabilizing new experiences depends on vulnerable brain circuits, and those circuits can be affected early. Meanwhile, older memories have often been revisited many times across a lifetime, which can make them more distributed and easier to access. This also explains why music, routines, and childhood stories can still shine through. The disease does not erase the person, it changes access. It reveals that memory is not one vault. It is a living network, and some parts are harder to keep online than others. Parkinson's can affect procedural memory and habit learning. When people think of Parkinson's, they often picture movement changes like tremor or slowness, yet the same brain systems that help control movement also help build habits and learn routines. That means a condition that changes those circuits can alter how skills and automatic behaviors are learned or maintained. A person may find that a once effortless sequence takes more concentration. A familiar task might require deliberate steps, like driving a route that used to feel automatic. This can be frustrating because the knowledge is not gone. The smoothness is what is affected. The brain is having trouble shifting from conscious control into a well-tuned habit loop. This is why practice rhythm and external cues can matter so much. A beat, a visual target, or a consistent routine can help the brain reassemble the sequence. It is a reminder that habits are not just willpower, they are biology. Sleep disorders can quietly disrupt memory consolidation. You can spend 8 hours in bed and still miss the kind of sleep your brain needs to stabilize learning. Conditions that fragment sleep can break the night into small pieces, and those pieces may not include enough deep sleep or REM for the brain's memory work. The next day, it can feel like information will not stick. You read, you listen, you repeat, and it still slides away. This can happen without dramatic symptoms. Some people do not realize they are waking repeatedly because the awakenings are brief, yet the brain notices. Memory consolidation depends on smooth cycles, like a careful handoff between different sleep stages. When that handoff is interrupted, new memories remain fragile, and older ones can feel harder to retrieve. This is why treating sleep can sometimes improve learning more than studying harder. Memory is not only made in the daytime, it is finished at night when the brain finally has room to organize. Depression can narrow recall toward negative moments. Depression does not only affect mood, it can change what memory offers you when you look back. Many people find that painful moments come to mind quickly, while positive ones feel distant or thin. It is as if the mind is searching a library with the lights dimmed in the bright sections. This bias can reinforce the illness because the past starts to look like proof that nothing gets better. Attention plays a role too. When you are depressed, your focus often collapses inward. That can reduce how richly new experiences are encoded, especially the small good ones. Later, there is less positive material to retrieve. Even time can feel distorted. Days blend and memories lose texture. The hopeful part is that this pattern can shift. Therapy, social support, and treatment can widen attention again. When attention widens, encoding improves. When encoding improves, recall becomes more balanced. Memory can become a partner in recovery rather than an enemy. Anxiety can hijack attention, weakening new memory formation. An anxious brain is scanning for danger, and scanning consumes resources. If your mind is busy tracking what might go wrong, it has less capacity to encode what is happening right now. That is why someone can sit through a meeting and later realize they barely remember the content. Their attention was elsewhere, running forecasts. Anxiety also makes memory feel jumpy. You may remember the one awkward moment in high detail while forgetting the calm parts around it. This is not because anxious people are careless. It is because the brain is prioritizing threat signals. Even mild anxiety can do this, especially when it is constant. The mind becomes a security guard who never sits down. The way out is not to force memory harder. It is to lower the alert level. Breathing, grounding, and predictable routines can free attention. Once attention returns, memory has a place to land. Chronic stress can shrink memory-related structures over time. Short bursts of stress can be useful. Chronic stress is different. When stress signals stay elevated for weeks or months, they can change the brain's physical landscape. Regions involved in forming new memories can become less robust, and connections can become less flexible. This does not mean your brain is doomed. It means your brain is adapting to what it thinks is a dangerous world. In that state, it invests in vigilance rather than learning. People often notice this as fog. Names slip. Reading becomes harder to absorb. The mind feels crowded with urgency. What is striking is that these changes can be reversible, at least in part. When stress is reduced and sleep improves, the brain can regain function and resilience. Exercise, social support, and time in safe environments can help restore plasticity. The brain is not a brittle object. It is a living organ that remodels itself based on the life you are living. Concussion can bruise memory circuits even without visible damage. A concussion can happen without a dramatic blow, and it can leave no obvious mark on a scan. Yet, the brain's wiring can still be rattled. Neurons can struggle with energy balance, and networks that normally coordinate smoothly can become noisy. People often describe it as being able to think, but not being able to hold on to thoughts. They may lose track mid-sentence. They may forget why they opened an app. They may feel slower at recalling words. This can be frightening because it feels like the mind is slipping. In many cases, recovery happens with rest, careful pacing, and time. The key is that the injury is often functional rather than structural in a way a scan can easily reveal. The brain is a living electrical system, and concussions can disrupt its timing. Memory depends on timing. When timing is off, recall can wobble. As timing heals, clarity can return. Some seizures can erase minutes like a missing film reel. There are seizures that do not look like dramatic convulsions. Some are subtle, and they can involve memory systems directly. A person might stare or seem briefly confused, then return to normal. Later, there is a gap. The minutes are gone, as if the brain recorded nothing during that window. Sometimes the person can function during the episode, yet the experience never gets stored. This is called transient amnesia in some contexts, and it can feel deeply unsettling. It reveals that memory is not guaranteed by being awake. The brain must successfully encode, and encoding depends on stable network activity. Seizure activity can disrupt that stability, especially in areas that support new memory formation. The result is a blank section in the timeline. For many people, treatment can reduce these events and protect memory. The missing reel is not a moral failure. It is a physiological interruption in recording. Certain drugs can block new memory while you stay awake. Some medications can leave you awake and talking, yet prevent new memories from forming properly. People may appear normal in the moment, then later have little or no recall of what they did or said. This effect is sometimes used intentionally in medical settings because it can reduce distress during uncomfortable procedures. Outside those settings, it can be surprising and risky because the person may make decisions without later remembering them. The mechanism often involves changing how the brain stabilizes new information, especially in systems that support encoding. It is not the same as falling asleep. It is more like the brain's save button has been disabled for a while. This is also why alcohol can create blackouts in some cases. The person is conscious and active, but the next day the timeline has holes. It is a stark demonstration that awareness and memory are separate functions and they can be uncoupled. Pain can compete with memory by stealing attention. Pain is designed to demand priority. When something hurts, the brain leans toward it because ignoring pain can be dangerous. The downside is that attention is limited. If pain is loud, there is less bandwidth for learning, planning, and storing new experiences. People in chronic pain often report that their minds feel slower and that recalling words or details takes more effort. This is not because they are weak. It is because their attention is constantly being taxed by a signal that insists, "Deal with me." Pain can also disrupt sleep, which further reduces the brain's ability to consolidate memories. The result can be a double hit: less encoding during the day, less consolidation at night. Effective pain management can therefore improve memory, even if nothing about the person's intelligence changes. When pain quiets, attention opens, and memory can start doing its job again. Memory can be strengthened by linking facts to a story. A story gives your brain a path to walk. Instead of holding isolated details, you hold a sequence with cause and effect, which makes recall feel natural. If you want to remember a scientific idea, place it inside a little drama. Something changes, something responds, something is at stake. Even a simple timeline can turn a slippery fact into something you can retrieve. This is why you remember plots from childhood books more easily than lists from school. Stories also create hooks for emotion and surprise, which makes the information stand out. You can use this intentionally. Turn a list of terms into a journey. Give them a setting and a problem to solve. When you do, you are not adding fluff. You are giving your brain structure. Structure reduces effort at retrieval because you can reconstruct the detail by following the narrative. A story is not only entertainment, it is a memory scaffold. Visualizing locations can organize memory like a mental map. Your brain is naturally good at navigating space, and you can borrow that skill for learning. When you imagine a familiar place like your home, you can store ideas in different rooms, then walk through them later to retrieve them. This technique is ancient and surprisingly effective because it turns abstract information into a journey with landmarks. You might place a key concept on the front step, a supporting detail on the sofa, and an example by the window. Later, recall becomes a stroll rather than a search. What makes it work is that locations are stable. Your mind knows where the kitchen is, so it gives the memory a reliable address. This method can also reduce anxiety during speaking because it gives you a route to follow if you blank. You are not grasping at air. You are walking through a place you already know, collecting ideas as you go. Smell-based cues can trigger recall faster than words. A scent can arrive and memory can follow before you have time to think. That speed happens because smell pathways connect deeply with emotion and memory circuits, often with fewer steps than other senses. Words require interpretation. Smell is immediate. It can pull up the mood of a place, the season, and the feeling of a person all at once. This is why a trace of chlorine can summon a childhood swimming pool, even if you have not visited one in years. It is also why scent can be hard to ignore. The brain treats it as environment information, something that could matter for safety and belonging. Smell cues are also stored in a quiet way. You rarely label them with language, so they remain dormant until the scent returns. Then the memory feels like it was hiding behind a door you did not know existed. One breath, and the door swings open. Switching rooms can make you forget what you just planned. Walking through a doorway can act like a mental reset. Your brain treats locations as separate contexts, and context helps organize what you are doing. When you change rooms, the brain updates its model of the situation. New cues take priority, and the previous intention can lose its grip. That is why you can head to the kitchen with a clear purpose, then stand there blankly as if the thought evaporated. The intention was fragile, and the context shift weakened it. The fascinating part is that the memory often returns if you go back, step into the original room, and the old cues can revive the plan, like reloading a paused scene. This effect is not a personal flaw. It is how an efficient brain files tasks. It uses space like a set of folders. Doorways separate the folders. If you want to resist it, say the goal aloud as you walk or carry an object linked to the task. You are giving the memory a bridge across contexts. Your name grabs memory because it is deeply self-relevant. In a crowded room, you can ignore dozens of conversations and still notice your name. That is because the brain treats self-related information as high priority. Your name is tied to identity, social belonging, and survival, so it receives special processing. This is why people remember their own name easily, and why they can feel startled when it is spoken unexpectedly. The effect also extends to other self-linked cues, like your birthday, your hometown, and your personal goals. The mind flags them because they might predict something important. You can use this bias to learn. If you connect new information to yourself, it often sticks better. That does not mean you need to make everything about you. It means you can create a personal hook. Ask how an idea relates to your life, your work, or your curiosity. Self-relevance turns abstract data into something your brain treats as worth keeping. It is like switching on a spotlight in the memory system. The brain remembers unfinished tasks better than finished ones. An unfinished task creates tension, and the mind holds on to tension. If you stop mid-problem, part of your brain keeps the goal active, as if it is waiting to complete the loop. That can make the task easier to return to later because it never fully left your working set. This is why a cliffhanger pulls you into the next episode. It is also why you might keep thinking about an unanswered email while trying to relax. The brain is not being petty. It is trying to protect a goal from being lost. Psychologists have studied this effect for a long time, and it helps explain why starting can be more important than finishing. Once you begin, the mind is more likely to carry the thread forward. You can use this strategically in study. Stop while things are going well, not when you are exhausted. Leave a small puzzle unfinished. Your brain will keep turning it over, and re-entry will be easier. You can remember more by chunking information into patterns. Your mind is better at holding patterns than scattered items. If you see a long string of letters, it is hard to keep. If you recognize it as several familiar groups, it becomes manageable. This is chunking, and it is the secret behind many memory feats. Chess experts can glance at a board and remember positions not because they have bigger memory, but because they see meaningful clusters. Musicians do the same. They do not remember every note as a separate object. They remember phrases and structures. Chunking turns many pieces into one unit with internal order. You can practice it in everyday learning. Instead of memorizing a list, look for categories. Instead of memorizing a process, look for stages. Instead of memorizing a speech, group it into beats. The goal is not to compress for speed. The goal is to compress for meaning. When information becomes a pattern, it becomes easier to hold and easier to retrieve. Familiarity can feel like memory even when details are absent. Sometimes you walk into a place and feel certain you have been there, yet you cannot recall when. That sensation is familiarity, and it can exist without full recollection. It is a quick signal that something matches stored patterns, even if the brain cannot retrieve the episode attached to it. Familiarity is useful because it helps you navigate quickly. It tells you what is likely safe and known, yet it can also mislead you. A face can feel familiar because it resembles someone else. A storyline can feel true because it follows a common pattern. That is why you can recognize a name yet not know who the person is. The brain is giving you a warm ping, not a full file. This separation between familiarity and detail is part of why memory can be confusing. You can feel sure without being able to explain. The feeling is real, but it is not complete. It is an early signal, not a finished answer. Babies form memories, but most adults cannot retrieve them. Your earliest years are not empty. Babies can learn patterns, recognize caregivers, and remember routines, sometimes after surprisingly long gaps. Yet most adults cannot pull up those early scenes as personal episodes. One reason is that the brain systems that support autobiographical recall are still developing, and early experiences are stored in forms that do not match the adult way of remembering. Language matters too. Once you can describe your life, you can rehearse it, and rehearsal helps stabilize memory. Before that, experience may be stored more as sensations, expectations, and emotional templates. You may not remember your first home, yet you might feel calm when you smell a certain soap or hear a certain lullaby-like rhythm. Those are traces. The past is there, but the access method has changed. It is like having a file saved in an old format. The information exists, yet the modern program cannot open it the same way. Childhood memories often become simpler each time they are recalled. A childhood memory can start as a messy scene with many moving parts, then become a clean story you can tell in one breath. This happens because each recall is also a summary. You select the key moment, you trim the background, and you keep what fits the meaning you took from it. Over time, the memory can lose texture. The weather disappears, the exact words fade. What remains is the lesson, the feeling, and the headline you repeat. Family storytelling can speed this up. If the same anecdote is told at gatherings, it becomes polished for laughter or comfort, and the polished version can replace the original. This is not necessarily loss. It is memory doing what it does best, turning lived chaos into usable meaning. Still, it can surprise you when you meet someone from your past. They may remember different details, and suddenly you realize your simple story was only one angle on a larger day. Teen years create many lifelong memories called the reminiscence bump. Ask many adults to name vivid memories, and a cluster often appears from the teenage years and early adulthood. This period is packed with firsts. First independence, first deep friendships, first heartbreaks, and big risks. The brain is also building identity at high speed, and identity makes experiences feel important. When something becomes part of who you believe you are, it tends to stick. There is also a cultural layer. Music, fashion, and major events during adolescence become reference points you return to for decades, which keeps those memories active. Even ordinary scenes can glow because they happened while your mind was setting its long-term preferences. Later, these years can feel larger than life, not because life was objectively richer, but because the brain tagged more of it as defining. The reminiscence bump is like a bright ridge on the timeline where memory stored extra detail because your future self was being assembled. Aging can slow recall while knowledge stays surprisingly strong. With age, many people notice that names and specific details take longer to retrieve. The word feels close, yet it will not arrive on command. At the same time, knowledge built over decades can remain impressive. Vocabulary, expertise, and life wisdom can stay stable and sometimes even improve. This split can feel frustrating because it makes you doubt your mind even when your mind is still rich. Part of what changes is speed. The brain can become less quick at pulling a specific file, especially under pressure. Another change is filtering. Older brains often ignore irrelevant noise better, which can support judgment, even if recall is slower. The comforting truth is that slow access is not the same as empty storage. Many memories are still there, and they often return when cues are right and the atmosphere is calm. Aging is not a simple decline. It is a shift in how memory is searched and how time is used. Older adults often remember meanings better than exact details. Over time, the brain becomes a strong extractor of lessons. Older adults may forget the precise wording of a conversation, yet remember what it revealed about a person. They may forget the date of an event, yet remember how it changed their priorities. This can be a sign of efficient memory, not weak memory. Meaning is what guides decisions, and decisions matter more than trivia. It is also why older people can be excellent advisors. They hold patterns across decades, and patterns are built from meaning. Detail memory can still be strong in many individuals, but the default emphasis often shifts toward the "so what?" This shift can also make stories more satisfying. The plot points may blur, yet the message becomes clearer. If you want to support detail recall in older adults, gentle cues help. Photos, places, and patient time can bring back specifics. Still, the meaning-first style has value. It is memory becoming more like wisdom and less like a diary. Bilingual minds can store memories with different emotional tones. If you speak more than one language, you may notice that certain feelings land differently depending on which language you use. A compliment can feel warmer in one language, while a scolding feels sharper in another. That is because language is not only words, it is context. It carries the sound of your childhood, the rules of your household, and the social world where you learned it. Memories linked to one language can therefore come with a particular emotional color. A story told in your first language may bring back the mood of home. The same story told in a later language may feel more distant, more like a report. This can matter in therapy, in relationships, and in daily self-talk. Switching languages can change how easily certain memories come up and how strongly they hit. It is not that one language is truer. It is that each language is tied to a different set of experiences, and memory travels along those ties. Your first language can unlock older, deeper memories. A first language is often wired into the earliest layers of your social world. It is the language of lullabies, childhood arguments, nicknames, and family rules. Because of that, hearing it can reopen doors that feel stuck in other languages. A phrase can bring back a relative's voice. A familiar expression can revive a long-forgotten scene, not as a clear picture, but as a feeling of being young again. This is why people who learned a second language later sometimes feel more emotionally exposed when speaking their first. The words are closer to early identity, and early identity is tied to deep memory. In some cases, older adults who struggle to find words in a later language can still speak their first fluently, especially under stress or fatigue. The older pathways can be more resilient. Your first language is not only communication, it is a key ring. It can unlock drawers of memory that were packed away before you had the vocabulary to label them. Dreams can remix memories into strange new combinations. Dreams often feel like nonsense, yet they are built from familiar ingredients. The brain pulls fragments from recent experiences, older memories, and emotional concerns. Then it blends them into new scenes. A coworker appears in your childhood home. A school hallway turns into a train station. These mashups can feel surreal, but they reveal something real about memory. The brain is not only replaying, it is experimenting. It is testing connections, exploring themes, and sometimes softening emotional charge by moving it into a new setting. This remixing can also support creativity. When you wake with an odd dream image, it can spark an idea because it links concepts that rarely meet in daytime logic. Dreams are not a perfect message from the unconscious, and they are not random noise either. They are memory networks in motion, running without the usual rules and discovering new paths through what you already carry. Lucid dreamers can sometimes signal awareness while still asleep. In lucid dreaming, the dreamer realizes in the middle of the dream that it is a dream. What makes this state especially fascinating is that some dreamers can communicate that awareness outward. During sleep, most muscles are effectively offline, yet eye movements still show through. Lucid dreamers can use planned eye patterns as signals, like tapping on a window from inside sleep. Researchers have used this to ask simple questions, then receive answers through eye codes or subtle facial movements. The exchange is limited, but the implication is huge. Part of the mind can be dreaming while another part can track instructions and respond deliberately. It is a split-screen form of consciousness. For memory, lucid dreaming is interesting because it can change how dreams are remembered. Awareness can make the dream more stable and easier to report after waking. It can also let dreamers practice skills or face fears in a controlled way. The sleeping brain is not sealed shut. Sometimes it can wave back. A sound during sleep can strengthen one chosen memory. If you pair learning with a specific sound, the sound can later act like a handle that the sleeping brain can grab. In lab studies, people learn information while a soft cue is present, like a particular tone. Later, during sleep, the same cue is played very quietly without waking the person. The brain can reactivate the linked memory trace as if it is briefly reopening the file to reinforce it. By morning, recall for the cued material can improve compared with similar material that was not cued. It is not a shortcut to knowledge you never learned. It is a way of strengthening what you already laid down. The intriguing part is that this happens while consciousness is offline. Your brain is still listening, still sorting, and still deciding what deserves to stay. The night is not just rest, it is rehearsal, and a simple sound can sometimes guide the rehearsal toward one chosen thread. Memory is shaped by culture because stories teach what matters. What you remember is influenced by what your world trains you to notice. In some cultures, people recall experiences through relationships and group roles. In others, memories are framed around personal choices and individual milestones. The stories you hear growing up teach you which details are worth keeping. They also teach you how to package a memory. Is it a moral lesson? Is it a funny anecdote? Is it a cautionary tale? Over time, your brain starts encoding life in that style. Even your earliest memories can be shaped by family storytelling. If your relatives often retell a certain moment, that moment becomes easier to access, and it can start to feel more central than other events that were just as real. Culture does not only shape what you say about the past, it shapes what your mind saves in the first place because memory is partly a tool for belonging. Place memory can guide you home using landmarks you barely noticed. You can navigate through a neighborhood while thinking about something else, then still turn at the right corner. That is place memory working in the background. Your brain quietly records layouts, distances, and landmark patterns even when you never intended to memorize them. Later, a single cue can guide you. A particular tree, a storefront color, the slope of the sidewalk. You might not be able to describe the route in words, yet your body knows where to go. This system is so strong that you can feel disoriented when a familiar landmark disappears. It is like someone removed a signpost inside your head. Place memory also explains why returning to an old school or a childhood street can trigger a flood of recollections. The environment acts like a set of labels that the brain recognizes instantly. You do not have to search for the memory. The place invites it forward. The brain stores taste memories to protect you from poison. Taste is tied to survival, so the brain treats it with special caution. If you eat something that makes you sick, you can develop a powerful aversion after just one experience. The flavor becomes linked to danger, and the link can last for years. This is called conditioned taste aversion, and it is so strong that it can override logic. You can know the illness was caused by a virus, yet the food still feels wrong. From an evolutionary view, this makes sense. It is safer to avoid a risky taste than to debate it. The system is also selective. Smell and flavor are stored together because smell helps identify food before you swallow. This is why nausea can be triggered by a scent alone. Taste memory is not designed to be fair. It is designed to be fast. It is one of the clearest examples of memory, acting as a bodyguard, making a sharp rule so you do not repeat a deadly mistake. Pain memory is often distorted, and it shapes future choices. People rarely remember pain with perfect accuracy. Later, you might recall a medical procedure as worse than it was, or you might downplay an injury you survived. The brain often stores a summary of pain rather than a full recording. That summary can be influenced by the peak moment and by how the experience ended. This distortion matters because it guides decisions. A memory of intense pain can make you avoid helpful treatment. A memory that feels smaller than reality can make you take risks again. Pain memory also interacts with fear and expectation. If you expect something to hurt, the experience can feel sharper. If you feel safe and supported, pain can feel more manageable. The mind is not trying to deceive you. It is trying to compress a complex experience into a guide for future behavior. Your choices tomorrow are shaped not only by what hurt, but by how your brain remembers it hurting. Anticipating an event can begin forming the memory early. Memory does not start at the moment something happens. It can start when you look forward to it. When you anticipate a first day, a reunion, or a performance, your brain begins building a scaffold. You imagine possible scenes, you rehearse outcomes, and you attach emotion to what has not occurred yet. That preparation can make the eventual event easier to encode because it already has a framework. It can also bias what you remember. If you expect rejection, you may notice every small cue that supports that fear. If you expect joy, you may focus on warmth and connection. Anticipation is like choosing the camera angle before the scene begins. It affects attention, and attention affects what gets stored. This is why waiting can feel so vivid in hindsight. You are not only living the present, you are also living a predicted future, and the prediction itself becomes part of the memory. Imagination and memory share brain circuits, which can blur them. The brain uses overlapping machinery to remember the past and to imagine the future. Both require building a scene from pieces, including people, places, and feelings. This is useful because it lets you plan. You can mentally try a conversation before you have it. You can rehearse a route before you travel, yet the overlap has a downside. When you imagine something repeatedly, it can start to feel familiar, and familiarity can be mistaken for truth. This is one reason daydreams can feel oddly real when you look back on them. It is also why visualizing success can be powerful, but also misleading if you confuse rehearsal with achievement. The brain is a simulator, and simulation uses memory ingredients. Your imagined worlds are built from the same building blocks as your remembered ones. When the boundary blurs, it is not because you are careless, it is because the brain reuses efficient tools, and sometimes the reuse comes with confusion. The brain predicts the future using patterns from stored memories. Much of perception is prediction. Your brain is constantly guessing what will happen next, and it uses past patterns to do it. If you have learned that a stove is hot, you pull your hand back before you touch. If you have learned that a friend's pause means they are upset, you respond before they speak. These are memory-based forecasts. They make life efficient because you do not have to solve every moment from scratch. This predictive skill also shapes what you notice. You tend to see what you expect and you miss what does not fit. That can be helpful in a familiar environment and risky in a new one. Prediction is a shortcut that saves energy. It is also why habits form. The brain recognizes patterns and automates responses. Memory is not only for looking backward, it is a tool for steering forward. Your future choices are guided by the invisible library of patterns you have already lived. You remember best when you feel safe, calm, and focused. A brain that feels threatened is built to escape, not to learn. When you feel safe, the nervous system can shift out of high alert and attention becomes steadier. Steady attention gives memory a clean signal to encode. Calm also reduces interference. If your mind is racing, new information has to compete with worry. Focus is the final ingredient. Even in a safe place, you can lose memory formation if your attention is fragmented. This is why a quiet study session can outperform hours of anxious effort. It is also why supportive environments matter so much for education. When people feel judged, they often remember the judgment more than the lesson. When they feel supported, they can store the content. Safety does not mean comfort in every moment. It means your body believes you can handle the challenge. When that belief is present, the brain opens its learning channels and memory becomes far more reliable. Memory is a living process, always updating with new meaning. A memory is not a fossil. It is more like a living document that can be revised as you grow. When you learn new information, it can change what an old moment means. A strict teacher might become, in hindsight, someone who is overwhelmed. A childhood fear might become, in hindsight, a reasonable response to chaos. The facts of the moment may not change, but the interpretation can. This updating can be healing. It can also be unsettling because it means the past is not fixed inside you. Each time you revisit a memory, you bring your current self with you, and your current self adds context. That is why perspective can change the emotional weight of an event. A memory can feel lighter after you understand it. It can feel heavier after you finally name it. This does not make memory unreliable. It makes it human. The brain is not storing the past for its own sake. It is storing it to guide the present. And guidance requires meaning. Without forgetting, the mind could drown in details and lose patterns. Forgetting is often treated as failure. Yet, it may be one of the brain's most important design features. If every detail stayed equally vivid, your attention would be constantly hijacked by irrelevant noise. You would struggle to generalize because every experience would feel unique and unconnected. Forgetting helps you extract patterns. It allows the brain to compress life into useful rules, like recognizing a friend's mood without recalling every past conversation. It also reduces interference between similar events, which makes decisions faster. Imagine remembering every time you parked a car in a lot. The memories would overlap and compete, and finding today's location would become harder, not easier. Selective forgetting protects clarity. It lets you keep the gist and release the clutter. This is why healing often includes forgetting the sharpness, not the meaning. The mind needs space to think. Forgetting creates that space, so the memories that remain can actually guide you. As we come to the end of our journey through memory, you can let the ideas settle like snowflakes on still water. We explored how attention opens the doorway, how sleep quietly organizes what the day delivered, and how a single scent or song can unlock a whole world you thought was gone. We noticed that memory is not one thing. It is a collection of systems. Some hold stories, some hold skills, some hold meanings that outlast the moment you learn them. We also looked at the gentler mysteries and the sharper edges. How emotion can spotlight a moment, how stress can distort, how confidence can feel like certainty even when the details have drifted. And through it all, we return to a calming truth. Memory is alive, and it is always learning what matters. If you have enjoyed this gentle journey here at The Sleepy Scholar, you are welcome to like, subscribe, or leave a quiet comment. It helps more curious minds find their way here, especially when the day has been long. Now, you do not need to hold on to any of it. Let the facts loosen their grip. Let your shoulders sink. Let your jaw unclench. Take a slow breath in and an even slower breath out. Allow the mind to do what it does best at night, to sort, to soften, to file away what is useful, and to release the rest. And if you are still awake, there is another video waiting for you on the screen now. You can follow it like a gentle step into the next room and let your thoughts keep slowing down. For now, rest. Let the present be enough. Sleep well and good night.